I meant no. I'm gonna ask this way from now on. I just I think I could make a huge. Oh, man.
There goes my coat. All right. Ready to rock and roll? Day, 5 p.m.
Well, thank you very much.
Ira, you ready? You ready?
Ready for what?
Our meeting?
Sure.
Okay, I'd like to call to order public safety meeting. Roll call.
Counselor Gibbs?
Here.
Counselor Barbell?
Here.
Mayor Reed?
Present.
Counselor Kelly?
Here.
Counselor DeDominicis?
Here.
Counselor McFarland?
Here.
Counselor Moore?
Here.
Okay, item 1 on the agenda, reports from department representatives and discussion with counselors. I did ask Chief Ritter to, and I hope you got this message, to do a presentation to the council about asset forfeiture because Counselor Barbell and I had talked about it, and I'm not going to pretend like I can regurgitate that, so it'd be really great if you could do that. All right, thank you.
Oh, real quick, Chief, what's the asset forfeiture fund? Is it still around 160,000? What is it?
We got another one.
Oh, nice.
I'm sorry, how much is that again?
208,000.
So, I tried to make as many notes as I could based on previous conversations or questions that I've been asked regarding the asset forfeiture program from the asset forfeiture manual that was updated in summer of 2018. So I'll kind of go through it's a lot of reading, but hopefully it gives some explanation. So the purpose of the asset forfeiture program is to deter crime by depriving criminals of the profits and proceeds of their criminal activities, to weaken criminal enterprises by removing the instrumentalities of crime, recover property to compensate victims, and enhance cooperation between federal, state, and local law enforcement agencies. That's kind of the elevator topic. So an overview. The Department of Justice and the Department of the Treasury asset forfeiture programs are first and foremost law enforcement programs. They remove the tools of the crime from criminal organizations. Kind of paraphrases what I just said there. The Department of Justice and the Department of Treasury emphasize these law enforcement purposes to their own law enforcement agencies and all federal, state, local, and tribal partner agencies. Agencies must comply with the applicable non-discrimination requirements of the following laws and their implementing regulations. I don't pretend to know what these are, but they're federal statutes. Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, 42 U.S.C. 2000D. Title IX of the Education Amendments of 1972, 20 U.S.C. 1681. Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973, 29 U.S.C. 794. And the Age Discrimination Act of 1975, 42 U.S.C. 6101, which prohibit discrimination on the basis of race, color, national origin, disability, or age in any federal assisted program or activity, or on the basis of sex in any federally assisted education program or activity. Agencies must take reasonable steps to provide meaningful access to their programs and activities for persons with limited English proficiency, consistent with the Department of Justice and the Department of Treasury requirements. Agencies must also agree to comply with all federal statutes and regulations permitting federal investigators to access records and any other sources of information as may be necessary to determine compliance with civil rights and other applicable statutes and regulations. One of the ancillary benefits of asset forfeiture is the potential to share federal forfeiture proceeds with cooperating state and local law enforcement agencies through equitable sharing. The Department of Justice and the Department of the Treasury equitable sharing programs enhance cooperation amongst federal, state, local, and tribal law enforcement by providing valuable additional resources to state and local law enforcement agencies. However, the program is designed to supplement and enhance, not supplant, appropriated agency resources. Not all law enforcement efforts will result in equitable sharing. Specifically, compensating victims remains a top priority of the asset forfeiture program. Pursuant to the Crime Victims' Rights Act, the Mandatory Victims Restitution Act, and Department of Justice and Department of Treasury policies, victim compensation always takes priority over equitable sharing. Government agencies are at times victims entitled to compensation prior to equitable sharing. So going into who's eligible, non-federal agencies who are eligible to participate in the equitable sharing program is any state, local, or tribal law enforcement agency that is a participant in the program and directly participates in an investigation or prosecution resulting in a federal forfeiture may request an equitable share of the net proceeds of the forfeiture. In order for a state, local, or tribal law enforcement agency to receive shared funds, the agency must be compliant with the program guidelines and reporting requirements. And I can tell you that that oversight on how it is utilized is scrutinized.
Chief Ritter, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Okay,
Please,
so
please stop me.
so your most recent statement about oversight on how it's used is scrutinized, in what way, or what is the method that, is like audit procedures, or?
So there is that, but it has to meet a law enforcement purpose first and foremost. But the subcategories of that, there are specific categories that it can fit into for purpose. So just a few of them. The one that you as a council see 99% of the time is law enforcement training and education. Training of investigators, prosecutors, and sworn and non-sworn law enforcement personnel in any area necessary to perform official law enforcement duties such as canine handler, narcotics, defensive tactics, criminal justice, language, constitutional law, accounting, finance, forensics, provided that the employee's regular duties require knowledge of these topics. Examples include training, conference, registration fees, tuition, speaker fees, or costs to produce training curricula. This provision does not permit donations or transfer of funds to associations or organizations providing training. So it still does limit the usage of it to law enforcement only. So we can't transfer those funds to a non-law enforcement agency just because we're going to attend. It has to be something specific in those.
Now, Chief, does, before we use asset forfeiture, in our cases, do we require a criminal conviction, or are we doing civil asset forfeitures with no criminal conviction?
So if you're talking about how these funds get to us,
Yeah, well, I know that you hear a lot about civil asset forfeiture throughout the nation. I think Minnesota was the one who recently passed a law, said you couldn't civilly forfeit money from the public unless there was a criminal conviction, but it's not the case, because you can file in the Supreme Court against the money in rem pretty much, trying to do that. I'm wondering, do we have local policies in place that prevent civil asset forfeiture unless there's a criminal conviction?
so it is my understanding, based on the requirements of this program and our participation in this, that we do not use civil forfeitures, that these are participating in a criminal investigation, and a heavy portion of that is narcotics related because of our participation in the DA task force locally. So those are related to criminal convictions. To my knowledge, we don't participate or have any, we don't involve ourselves with civil forfeitures.
It's based on, yeah.
That's my understanding of it, and that's, when I dove a little deeper into how you can even get to participate in this sharing program, there are specifics, and it has to be involved in an investigation to criminal activity that results in a criminal conviction.
Now, how does it get split up? Say if our police department pull someone
This is a
over
long one.
and gives them for DWI. I know sometimes to get a good plea offer, you might do.
Oh, no, so this wouldn't be related to DWI. There's no federal DWI.
Sure, but I know that the DA's office, sometimes to get a bit of plea offer, we do $10,000 in lieu of civil forfeiture instead of taking your car.
So
It's pretty
So that's
common.
not this.
We don't get any share of that.
Through this, no, not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
This is
almost
federal.
strictly a one-time, the big bag of cash and the bunch of marijuana that was coming across the border. This is almost always criminal related to drugs.
But I know that the Court of Appeals has held that your car can be civilly, or can be seized due to a DWI conviction. And I know those.
But this isn't part of the drug task force. Our stuff is only the drug task force
So
stuff.
we don't get
Oh.
anything from
DA might be doing
DWIs.
other stuff and everything, but not us.
I would echo what the mayor says, like, we're talking about two different things
Okay.
that are in the same subject category, but that's not what this is, and this is what the asset forfeiture, our federal sharing program is.
Okay, so
Not,
Do we get any civil forfeiture or
Yes, we do.
forfeiture
We
funds?
get fines and forfeiture, revenue.
Running away from
Court
bail,
decision.
stuff like that.
We get a share of that. And if I guess an auto is seized and sold, then it can come to the city as part of the fund. It all comes through the court system, county court system, city court system.
And that goes to the general fund, correct?
Yep.
Whereas this is a
Called
separate
fines.
fund.
Oh,
It's
so
not-
that goes to the general fund, whereas these would go.
this
right
is
to-
something
This goes to
completely
the
different.
General fund reserve called asset forfeiture.
Mhm.
It's not considered part of the operating income of the general fund. The expenditures have to be offset by the revenues, and it's all part of what flows through the reserve. It has nothing to do with the operating expenses at all, or
Okay.
revenue. But the fines that we get from the courts do. And that's where DWI fines come to us.
I know, but I know a lot of times when the DWI plea bargains, we'll do like a, pay us a lump sum money in lieu of forfeiture to keep your car sort of thing. But that
It's
doesn't come
within
to.
the city's jurisdiction, we would earn a share, if not all of those fines.
Okay.
I'm not aware of those. I'm not saying that doesn't exist, but it's my understanding that's not what this is.
All right, so this is almost exclusively from the drug task force.
Almost exclusively.
Okay. Thank you.
Because these have to be submitted on a form called a DAG, which is a federal form, and it's when there's an arrest and there's property to be seized, held for evidence, or in the future to be seized as a result of a criminal conviction. This is all through the DEA.
So help me out here. If our police officers, in conjunction with the Adirondack Drug Task Force, executes a search warrant and finds $100,000 cash with an amount of cocaine, and it leads to a conviction, that $100,000, how does that get split up between the DEA, the local law enforcement, the DA's office?
In order to receive an equitable share, an agency must assist in the law enforcement effort resulting in federal forfeiture. Federal forfeiture. As a general rule, the forfeiture should follow the criminal case. If the property is seized as part of an ongoing federal investigation and the defendants are being prosecuted in federal court, the property should be federally forfeited. If the property is seized as part of an ongoing state investigation and the defendants are prosecuted in state court, the property should be forfeited in state court, assuming that state law allows for the forfeiture. A state or local law enforcement agency transferring property to the federal government must comply with all applicable state laws and regulations pertaining to such transfers. So it still funnels a certain way. This is under what is the process to apply for and receive a share. Percentages allocated to a law enforcement agency must bear a reasonable relationship to the agency's direct participation in the law enforcement effort resulting in the federal forfeiture. The deciding authority ordinarily determines percentages by comparing the number of work hours expended by each agency participating in the federal forfeiture, including all federal, state, local, and tribal agency contributions. Where the work hours alone do not reflect the contribution of a law enforcement agency, the deciding authority, which is the federal government, considers qualitative factors in making adjustments to the sharing percentage. The deciding authority will consider such qualitative factors, such as the inherent importance of the contributing activity, whether the agency otherwise entitled to an adjustment would already receive a comparatively large share based on reported work hours, whether the agency originated the information leading to the seizure, whether the agency provided an articulated, specific, unique, or indispensable assistance, or whether the agency seized one or more assets that were forfeited in non-federal proceedings during the same investigation. Any of these qualitative factors may warrant an increase or decrease in the percentage awarded to an agency. The deciding authority has discretion to determine on a case-by-case basis whether and how much to adjust the sharing allocation. No sharing request or recommendation, including shares negotiated in a task force or other agreement, is final until approved by the federal deciding authority. Equitable sharing is based on the net proceeds of the forfeiture, which is calculated as follows. Less the gross receipts, which is from the forfeiture or the sale of the forfeited property. Less qualified third-party interests, the liens or mortgages, payment to victims, federal case-related expenses, litigation expenses, federal property management and disposition expenses, awards paid to federal informants, payments for the services of experts and consultants hired to assist in asset identification, seizure, management, forfeiture, or disposition, international sharing, reimbursements related to the seizure from the Department of Justice Assets Forfeiture Fund or the Department of Treasury Forfeiture Fund to the requesting agency. That is how they formulate it. There's no specific formula. The federal government basically says, generally speaking, how much were you involved in this? Just because you're part of a task force doesn't mean that it's an equal share. They do weigh, was the Plattsburgh City Police Department working more or spent more work hours that led to this investigation getting to conclusion, is how I read this. But there are a host of other factors that could change that it's not just the work hours alone that are the primary calculation.
I just have a couple questions.
Please.
I appreciate that you're saying that we're only involved in criminal forfeiture, because I was concerned about civil forfeiture as well, and there's a lot of places around the country that have gotten a pretty bad reputation.
I would agree.
For,
I would agree.
stopping somebody for DUI and taking their car as a forfeiture.
Yep.
But there's New York State forfeiture law, and then there's the federal law that you're speaking about. And I don't want to get into the details at this time about the difference
Sure.
between the two, but there is a difference. And my question is just down the road is, do we have a specific policy? For example, if a car gets stopped and the police officer says, well, I smell marijuana in the car, and will you allow me to search your car? And the person says yes, and allows them to search the car, and they find drugs in the car. Now you have a criminal offense, not just a vehicle, traffic vehicle offense in that. And, I'm interested in how the police department is setting policy about how you handle those kinds of things around asset forfeiture. So do they come to you? Does somebody, who makes those decisions in that process?
What decisions?
Well, let's assume you've got a drug deal, or you seize drugs out of a car, and perhaps you seize money, whatever was there as well. That's not a federal operation. That's your operation. You as a police department handle that operation by yourself. So there must be some policies and procedures, or do you have policies and procedures that say, this is what happens, in this process? Does the DA get involved? Do other local people get involved?
So I think what you're referring to is set by the DEA, that there are certain policies and
So
procedures.
New York State has its own asset forfeiture law. You
Okay.
wouldn't have to even have the DEA or the feds involved to do forfeiture in New York State.
Right, so we don't seize at a state level. The Plattsburgh Police Department on its own does not go and stop a car for DWI and say, well, this section says that I can do this, so at the end of this, we're gonna seize your car,
But,
you know.
but you would, if you thought he was high on marijuana, you would search that car? No?
But
If
I
there is
think
probable
even-
cause to investigate an offense, yes.
Okay, I'm not saying that's wrong, I'm just like, yeah, you would, and you might find drugs and money in that car.
But then that's ultimately turned over in this disposition of the court. There's a city court. I think your question more are.
Do we just
city
keep it
court-
in-house and keep
Well,
it,
how,
like?
you know, yeah, I just wondered, is a particular procedure, if you do seize stuff that's not part of a drug task force, it's the city police department is making seizures, you know, and criminal seizures, I'm not even getting into civil, you know, and I don't, as I said, we don't need to get into a lot of detail on it, but it's, just, you know, it seems to me it's a police training issue as well, coming probably up to you at some point, saying, here's how we're gonna handle this.
I don't see any problems with how it is functioning. Is there something that?
No, I'm just
Okay,
asking, do you have
I
a,
didn't know if there was something that.
is there a
You end up
is this-
embargoing a car because they're DWI. Does the city police collect that car and then sell it in auction?
No, we
The
don't.
answer is no. Everything is disposed to the court.
No, we don't.
And they do all that. Now, there's a city court system. Maybe we need to ask them that question,
Yeah.
how all that works.
yeah, you know, I heard.
That would be a better question for the district attorney's office. That, you
So
know,
that's not something that you will make an arrest and then it goes through the legal process at that point.
that is something that we do seize stuff for evidence. If there is something that could be construed as criminal proceeds of a crime, absent the DEA task force, that's ultimately something that the district attorney's office has the oversight on.
Okay, that's fine.
Without getting too much into it, that,
I don't want to get too much into the details.
No,
I
it-
just,
it's an important issue. I don't want you to think that I don't think that it is very, very important.
No, I wouldn't give that impression. My main concern when I raised that way back when was, you know, civil versus criminal. You've answered that, and that
That
was
is-
an issue.
that is
thing
not
was,
something that
right.
we-
And I'm glad about that.
Yep.
So,
No, that's I have personal feelings about it, but professionally, it doesn't seem like that is. It makes sense for a police department that investigates crimes to make seizures that are related to criminal offenses.
Right.
That's
No,
my professional
no
feeling.
problem.
Well, that leads to my last question. So like the two concerns I can see with civil, or with asset forfeiture is if it's civil instead of criminal. The other one would be if there was, it leads to an incentive of maybe focusing on crimes where there could be money forfeited in. Because it would come through, through some disbursement, money would come to our local police department, which we could then use for training. And we've seen that it grow about $48,000 in the past year. And so we want to I guess the question would be, are there policies in place to ensure that focus isn't on crimes where there could be money forfeited, and in lieu of focusing on other crimes, like there's a lot of certainly big crimes or important crimes that be investigated, and that those aren't being shortchanged because focus is on crimes that could lead to forfeit money.
So I would just say, generally speaking, there is no previous, it's unlikely that we know, oh, there's gonna be $100,000 in this house. We should hatch a plan to find this person committing this crime so we can execute a search warrant, so we can seize this money. These come about from very lengthy criminal investigations, 95% of the time involving drugs, drug sale, drug trafficking, where those are byproducts of the crimes themselves. So I do not see, based on my firsthand knowledge of how these are investigated, that there would be an incentive previous to conducting the investigation. All of these investigations start with the sale of drugs or a probable cause to investigate some sort of crime. So as far as a policy or procedure, I think that this program, speaking about this one, has the preamble that I talked about, the compliance aspect of it. It's pretty broad when it comes to being compliant with doing this for noble purposes, that this is that this shouldn't be an incentive-laced program, that we're just
Yeah.
picking on people because we know that they might have money. That's,
I guess it would be allocation of resources. Is there a large allocation to focus on like busting marijuana distribution because there can be cash seized from that instead of focusing on,
so I would say,
robberies
if
or
you looked
like
at the pie chart of the Plattsburgh Police Department, there'd be this tiny little sliver, not even enough to have like a good bite at dinner, that is allocated for these type of investigations that lead to typically forfeitures.
Okay, good. Yeah.
I mean, so we don't stack our resources for that purpose. I would love if there were more resources, but not for an incentive-based program. You know, there are other areas, there are other services that we must provide that they don't focus on that, and that's, preventing crime, keeping the safety of people at the top of the priority, enforcing traffic laws, those kind of things, where if it was all about money, there'd probably be 10 detectives on the DA task force. That would look a little conspicuous.
Yeah.
Folks, there's two presentations, executive session and work session, so just ask you to be very mindful of the time.
Indeed.
Thanks, Chief.
I'm satisfied with
Me
this
too.
answer. Thank you
Okay.
very much.
I'd be more than happy to follow up if you want to coordinate with Mayor. I'm
No, that's.
more than happy to.
Thank you. I really appreciate that.
Thanks, Chief.
Okay, do we have any other reports from department heads or representatives? Okay. So I would entertain a motion to move agenda items to our regular agenda. Items 1 through 6.
So moved.
Second,
Council Gibbs?
Yes.
Council Barbell?
yes.
Mayor Reed?
Yes.
Okay, do we have any old business? Any new business? Okay, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved,
Second.
Council Gibbs?
Yes.
Council Barbell?
yes.
Mayor Reed?
Yes. Thank you. Let's begin our work session. We've actually got a couple of presentations. Is Andrew around for one of the presentations? Just have to put up that thing on the board. Can you give him a call? In the meantime, we'll see the presentation from.
What was it? Is it something I got?
I think we showed this in this hard drive. I can put up
Yeah, I thought he was gonna be here.
5. I just don't have option 5A.
Yeah, I thought he was gonna be here.
I thought so.
I mean, I can explain it.
He said he was coming back.
And then maybe what we could do is put it on the website so everyone can see it,
Okay.
all right?
Maybe we're not so.
Okay. Hello.
Hey, how are you?
Thank you for having us. It's been a little while since I've been here. It's nice to see some new faces. My name is Libby Kaganare. I'm the project manager at Boyer Benner Group. I'm here today with my colleague Aaron Benner. On behalf of our entire group to present an update on the marketing signage and branding DRI project. The first thing I'd like to talk about is the public engagement we did in conjunction with our LPC committee. The first thing that we did was put out an online survey. We got 424 survey submissions from the online survey. We were super excited about that. Hopefully everyone here took the survey. The next thing that we did was have a couple smaller, well, not smaller, but have a couple different focus groups where we could actually have conversations with people. The first one that we had was at the Ted K Center. And that was a smaller group, but the people that attended that that meeting were really passionate, and we had some really great conversations about some of the things that we talked about. The next thing we did was at SUNY Plattsburgh, and we had a really great group there. A lot of people that were new to the area and you know, didn't grow up here, so it was really great to get their perspective, and also you know, the younger student opinions was really great. And then we had a session at the farmers market. The farmers market was incredible. We actually got to talk to a lot of people, and a lot of people really interacted with us at our table. The best thing that came out of the farmers market for us was that picture in the corner. If I can get to this picture right here, this gentleman we were talking with told us the most incredible story that Aaron and I both, even growing up here in this area, didn't know that right here in the harbor there was a ship that had an anchor, that used its anchor to pivot back and forth, and it was a strategy that they used to really help them succeed. And that was like a little piece of history, something that I didn't even know about, which was really exciting for us, because a lot of the public engagement that we got really led us to, really helped frame how we kind of got to what we consider to be the look and feel for downtown Plattsburgh, which is a historic look and feel. We really want to thank Amy Bond. She was from Finch Network. She really helped us with the public engagement. And also, we want to thank the Press Republican and I'm glad that Mackenzie's here tonight, because she was the one who actually wrote the articles about the online survey that we did that really helped us get up to a good number of responses. So thank you for that. The next thing I'm going to talk about is what I talked about actually the last time I was here, was the special event feather banners. The feather banners were up during the Mayor's Cup and the 4th of July celebration, and we really loved seeing them out there, seeing them in action. We got a lot of positive feedback on those. As you can see the pictures from the event, they really stood out, and we thought they looked really great. The next thing that we've been spending a lot of time working on is the banners that are on the light poles. Currently, right now, they have Adirondack Coast banners, and you see them all over. We identified about, I want to say, 60 to 70 locations in the downtown area where we could replace these. And I'm going to take you on a little bit of a design journey. The first designs that we had in Phase 1 and Phase 2, Phase 1 is really more of a modern look. It uses elements from the logo, and it's a little bit cleaner and uses photography. We also did Phase 2, which we consider to be more of a historical look. It has a little bit of a aged tannish color, and sort of depicts some sort of hand drawings. These are the two of the options that we put out in the online survey, and it was the historical look that got the most votes. Which we evolved into what you see here for Phase 3, which takes the historical look. And we evolved from Phase 2 to Phase 3 after the online survey, but before we met with people in the group, in the face-to-face public engagement we did. And it was really, people kept saying over and over, it was such a common thread from a lot of people, was that it's the history that enriches this area, and really is what a lot of people talked about. So we evolved it even more into the sort of more of a lithograph image and a little bit more historic font. So that gets me to where we're sort of at the moment. Is a new banner design. And I'm sorry, it looks like it's cut off a little bit on this slide. So we have commissioned Dave Monette, the amazing Dave Monette, to do original art for all of the banners. Dave is he's an illustrator, author, educator. He's a gallery director at the Strain Center for the Arts, and we're really, really lucky that we were able to get him to do all the art. So this is one that we have, sort of a first look of one that we have, and it depicts a historic vibe with the hand-drawn ship. So we really love this, and this is just a first look of this one for us. So the next thing that I'm going to talk about is some signage recommendations for the local businesses downtown. And Erin's going to pass out first draft of a brochure that we've put together. So we researched and studied many different downtown municipalities and codes when we sort of put together these recommendations. While we always are looking to be innovative, this is something that we didn't really want to reinvent the wheel, so we took a lot of inspiration from other locations. We looked at Saratoga, Saranac Lake, Ellicottville, Cooperstown, and Clayton, New York. And we also drew some inspiration from Charlestown, South Carolina, Denver, Colorado, and Nashville, Tennessee. And really the purpose of these recommendations is to encourage signage that clearly and simply informs both pedestrians and motorists of businesses' names, services, but doesn't detract or interfere with the architectural and historical quality of the downtown Plattsburgh district. So I'm going to talk about a couple things pertaining to different types of signage materials. So the location and area of the signs, wall mount or flush mounted signs, awnings, and then hanging and projecting signs. So for the sign location and area, the location of the sign should be in harmony with the architecture and time period of the building. Signs should not obscure other buildings, windows, or doors. Permanent signage must observe established City of Plattsburgh codes. And the same guidelines would apply to the front of buildings, would also apply to the rear facing facades. A couple different types of sign. The first one is a wall or flush mounted sign. Wall signs should have a basic rectangular shape and be applied horizontally directly above or to the side of the entry. Variations with respect to basic rectangular shape would be acceptable. When there's two or more businesses occupying the same building, the shape and color of signage for both should complement one another. Signs should be hung in the same position on the storefront. Next, I'm going to talk about awnings and then hanging and projecting signs. For awnings, awnings must provide at least a 7-foot clearance above the grade of the sidewalk. They can't extend more than 7 feet into the right-of-way or be 0.1 feet from the curb, whichever is less. And some design tips, repairing and preserving historic awnings is highly encouraged. Selecting a shed-style awning with a traditional loose valance. Line your awnings in location with existing wall openings. And select canvas or similar style fabric. Plastic and vinyl awnings would generally be discouraged. For hanging and projecting signs, they should be located in an effective location for pedestrians, yet placed no closer to the ground than 8 feet and set back from the curb a minimum of 18 inches. While they have different font and lettering, they may have different font and lettering from wall or freestanding signs. They should feature a company logo, business name, or symbol, or object that depicts the goods sold. And they should be secured to the facade of the building with proper appropriate hardware. Next, I'm going to talk a little bit about some temporary and window signage. For temporary signage is generally not allowed. Temporary signage is allowed and encouraged. Movable signs promoting activities, products, and services of business are allowed with the following guidelines. Movable signs should be displayed directly in front of the business, but not obscure pedestrians. They must be displayed during business hours and stored securely during closed hours. A limit of 1 movable sign per business, and movable signs should not exceed 8 square feet in size. For the window signage, they should be no more than 25% of the window area. Lettering should be placed closer to the entrance of the business, so not to obscure visibility into the shop. Signed lettering and graphics can be applied directly onto the glass or applied to a acrylic panel behind the window. And the design should be simple and to the point. For materials and installations, the materials should be the desirable materials would be wood, glass, brick, or metals with a matte finish. Wood signs can be painted, stained, or feature raised metal letters or numbers. For illumination, per the code already, neon signs are not permitted in the downtown district. And plastic signs with illuminated from behind would be strongly discouraged. Signs should have the potential to be lit in the evening for visibility through the use of soffit lighting or screened flood lighting at a low wattage. You should restore and retain historic fixtures whenever possible. And then choose matte finishes of satin, antique, oil rubbed, aged, or matte black. And select your fixtures of an appropriate scale to the size of your building. So that concludes the brochure. So I'd like to wrap up and talk a little bit about some projects that we have in the works right now. The first is, I already spoke about the banner installation. We also are working on replacing some of the street signs. So those are the green and yellow street signs in the downtown area, replacing them with something that has more of a historic look and possibly incorporating some of the brand elements. Another thing we're working on is an interactive map. So this would be an online map that lives on the city website. And it would feature businesses, landmarks, walking trails, and then also the historic markers that the Office of Community Development have been working on. We're also looking into doing some like a You Are Here map. So that would be a map at key locations adhered to existing structure that would show a map of the downtown area with a You Are Here marker in it. And then also would refer people back to the online map where there would be all the real detailed information about businesses and how to get in touch with businesses and shops in downtown. And then the other thing is the wayfinding that we're working on. So that's updating the signage that in the key locations that is already there. We're looking to update some of the existing structure that has the old logo on it to match the look and feel of the other things that we're updating with the historical look. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Another question. You're developing a whole look and feel for the downtown, so people are in
Exactly.
the downtown historical district, they know they're in the historical district.
Yes.
Can the signs, I like the idea, the signs perpendicular to the buildings and everything, but can the sign standards be consistent with some sort of look and feel and color scheme, so everybody knows, if you go to like Old Sturbridge Village or Salem, Massachusetts or something, a lot of the color schemes and the signage, even on the buildings, are consistent with some sort of design standards and look and feel, so they're part of history rather than, modernistic and neon here and then historical there.
So we had a lot of discussion specifically about limiting colors, and at this point, it's of our opinion that we don't want to necessarily limit colors too much, because a lot of businesses have preset brand standards, and to ask people to change who their set identity is if they wanted to move into the downtown area, we felt like that could possibly deter people from wanting to move here. It is a balance, because we want people to open new businesses in the downtown area, but we also want to set a kind of a standard of, that you're in historical downtown, and that vibe is known as soon as you come here. So we have had a lot of discussion about that, and at this point, limiting colors, we sort of took that off the table. But definitely, I think by changing to allow the perpendicular signs, which currently under the code now is not allowed, would, just by doing that and changing the street signs and changing we've been looking at there's like directional signs that are like a blue that have the old logo on the top, swapping those out, using the existing structure there and swapping those out for a real historical look, changing all the banners. In just the span of a couple months, accomplishing all these things, we felt really would be a transformation. And then you have hopes that people move into this area, they're gonna follow along with that, with that sort of look and feel. If that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. And so these are kind of some suggestions that we might want to take up in the zoning code.
Yes. And then this brochure, and this is just a draft of the brochure, could be used as a tool for, if somebody is interested in moving downtown and they go to the, code officer or whatever, would be a lot easier for people to read and understand than, in preparation for doing this, everyone in our group, we all read a lot, we researched everyone's codes, and it's, for someone who's not in government, it can be tedious trying to find out, okay, exactly what can and can't I do? And the hopes for this brochure is that it would be something that would be available to, to new business owners or anybody that would be more, in terms that are easily digestible for them.
Yeah, I think it's great.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think we've got that item to project that you'd asked for.
Yes, I saw. Beth put it up there. Okay, so we took all the concerns from people either by email, telephone calls to me, the council meeting last week, and what we've tried to do, and I credit Public Works, Andrew, with putting several options together for us to consider. This is our most updated current option that we are currently considering. I think the council is actually, at this point, pretty well in favor of it. So this option cuts utility strips down to 2 feet, sidewalk, this is 5A, sidewalk down to 4 feet, but would also need turnarounds to be ADA compliant. Approximately a 5-foot encroachment into the yard rather than the 15 feet that we had considered as part of options 2 and 3. There would be parking on the east side of the street, which is that odd side of the street. And Public Works has chosen that because there are light poles there, so there would be illumination for any of the cars parked there. New information that came to me, I didn't realize this until I had just spoken to the mayor last night about this. I was not in favor of using sidewalks in this neighborhood, but I was made aware that there is federal funding that would go towards paying for these sidewalks. But if we design this without sidewalks, we would have to take money out of our general fund for it, and I was not aware of that. So this provides pedestrian access, on-street parking. This is not an enormous encroachment into people's yards as the original plan, which was 15 feet into the yard. So this takes into account all the things that we thought would make it safe, would reduce liability. It would provide the sidewalks, as we said. On-street parking would still exist, and less intrusive into people's property. I don't know if I'm leaving anything out, Jeff?
I think I would add about the width of the lanes were reduced to 10.5 feet for the car lanes.
No, 11 feet is what I have down.
11 feet?
11
I thought
feet.
we
Yeah, we
gone
would
to
need the 11 feet,
10.5.
Andrew said, because we would need access for emergency vehicles, especially fire trucks. Mirror to mirror, they need that 11 feet.
I think we can still lower it to 10.5 feet. Elizabeth, why couldn't we just pave it and leave it exactly how it is now?
So this came up last week about the various aspects of the project. Number one, the curbing. Why does curbing need to go in there? Because without curbs on people's property to stop the property from, having that curb there before the street, you just continue to compound the water problem that is ruining the street. And then we have the water lines under the road that need repair and replacement. So if all we did is go through and resurface it and fix the potholes like we've done in other projects, all you're doing is throwing away taxpayer money, because then we'd be back at this project with the same broken road, and it would cost that much more money. And one of the things that I'm very mindful of is government waste. It would be a huge waste of taxpayer money to not do it right the first time. And that's what we're trying to do here. And for clarity, the decision to do this was driven by complaints out of people from the Hogan Avenue neighborhood who were using a letter writing campaign, threats of lawsuits, and so forth. And so this is one of the reasons why we turned our attention to it this year. So it's not an option to just pave it and leave it alone. And we also know that the engineering company is not going to work with us unless we have some pedestrian access for them. We have to make sure that our liability is covered here. Jeff, do you want to add anything? Am I missing anything?
No, I think, as we've expanded this, we are up to 6 choices now. So we had a real good, we have a real good selection to review. And I think we should be able to vote on this next week. Everybody will have a chance to digest everything that we have on the table right now and approve a plan next week.
I think so.
And you say if we just paved it, it would open the city up to liability?
No, if we just pave it, you're not solving the problem. The problem is the water lines under the road and the fact that there's no curb, it's just lawn straight into the street. It just continues to compound the water problem that's ruining the road. So to just pave it is not an option. That's waste of money. Because we'd be right back at it in a couple of years, the same potholes, same water problems, and why would we do that?
But you said something about the engineering company and liability.
Yeah, we need pedestrian access and ADA compliance. The engineering company will not work with us unless they can protect themselves from possible liability from future lawsuits if anything happens.
And so if there were no sidewalks, that would open up the city to.
It's either sidewalks or stripes. And if we put stripes on the road, the outcry in the neighborhood is people in the neighborhood want on-street parking. And options 2 and 3 were such a huge encroachment into the property. With this option, with 5A, there's somewhere between 5 and 6 feet rather than 15 feet.
So just to touch briefly on that discussion between the engineering firm, they, in order to do a no sidewalk option that would be against any design standards, so not only would it limit the ability for the city to receive any federal or state funding, but they would have a specific waiver of liability saying they'll design it in theory, but the city would have to take on all responsibility if someone were injured because it wasn't up to design standards.
And to me, that's foolish. Why would we do that?
And if we were to lose federal and state funding, would that just be for this project or any project?
Any project that you don't, the federal and state obviously wants to incentivize walkability and pedestrian safety, so they put carrots along with their funding to say, you can receive our funding, but you have to bring these up to speed, or up to these standards. So, for this project, basically any project that doesn't meet those standards would not be eligible for reimbursement for those fundings. Not only CHIP funding, but also potential grants or future walkability studies.
Would that just be for this project, or would it harm funding for future projects as well?
Any project that doesn't meet those standards would not be eligible for that funding source.
What's the dollar amount, do you know, a rough dollar
For this
amount?
project so far, I think that you put in the budget 300,000.
300,000 we would lose.
It's the
if we-
major project
If we didn't
for
put
next
the
year, yeah.
sidewalks in.
And generally, what we do is we use CHIPS funding for the major projects. We do the lesser, smaller projects that that aren't as complicated, that aren't doing the major rebuilds. We use the general funds for those.
I just want to reiterate that, it doesn't make sense to do a project. The drainage in the city is not great in many areas, as we all know, when there's a rainstorm and you go through those puddles. And when you have chances, when you're spending this much money and you have chances to correct a drainage problem, which is one of the main reasons that we're doing this, you really need to address that.
I think just one of the other things that we talked about, though, is making sure this gets out so that people can review it and can take a look at it for feedback. We want to make sure that residents are aware that there are other options. So I believe the website, is that where we were going to put this for public review? Can we do that? So that, and then let people know that it's there, I think, because it wasn't on, the agenda today, so we want to make sure that we're talking about it now, but that other folks can have a look at it again.
I agree.
Anything else on this item? I know we have a,
Excuse me, am I allowed to ask a question?
During public comment, you can, yep, you can.
when is that?
Public comment will be after our regular meeting.
Probably around 5:50 or 5:45.
Yeah, so public comment is at the end of the regular council meeting. A regular council meeting starts at 5:30, so it'll be at the end of the meeting, which I anticipate will take about 6 o'clock.
But I thought you gave an exception to that when you were talking about it beforehand.
Last week I did, yes. We did.
At this time, I'd like to entertain a motion to go into executive session to discuss pending potential litigation with a particular company.
So moved.
Second. Second, Councilor Bartle, second by Councilor Moore, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? This should be pretty fast, folks, 5 minutes, and we'll begin the council meeting.
They'll take general questions at the end.
That's what they're saying, they want to put it back on for this.
It wasn't on last week's agenda. It was?
Enough time to work it out, years. I saw him, he gave a presentation, we had everything in a circle. So, him and his partners. Probably. The closer is about a year. Oh, then yeah. Yeah, it's one of his partners, just kind of about, you know. Yeah, I never asked you that.
Absolutely.
That's part about it.
That's what he said, yeah, oh, I knew it was, when something I heard that, I was like, oh, it's great. Yeah, so
That was where I see this part, that way. Now that you're one, now you're not.
Yeah, sure.
Well, Sam's, that was like $50,000 over budget. Higher than the first one. So I guess, good.
Yeah, and I thought,
Good sandwiches.
yeah.
Like what, like 40?
They are.
Like 40 tables?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They are.
Next meeting, you know, that's what.
And the first one, I really did.
Yeah. That's what she does. Once the MLB demo last year, 160 this year, yeah. The stuff that we got back, that was from the DOS, where it's all the ESP stuff, that's a benchmark. She's technically project manager right now, but we're gonna run out of money in her grant for the next 5 months. So the moment pretty much. So yeah, that worked out well. Yeah, worked out well. Maybe we finally meet the close to the black. That'd be Construction starts Thursday. Email me and said, hey, are you gonna do any of those FRB projects applications? Yeah. How's the parking lot going? John Harris.
How are you, John?
I'm putting that on my list. That's what he said. How many people live on the one that, I'll ask, but you told me we're putting this one, I said, am I putting this one up? He said, yes. I don't know. Well, this is 60, because it's 5 days. It doesn't have a 60. Because it's 5 days, it's 5, now this is 5 days, so that is 6. We didn't get to that 5 or 5 days. I'll ask. She retired from the county court. Yeah. She just retired, so she doesn't, you're on vacation. Yeah, it's still like vacation. I bought some lobsters. I can't. I was you over there. I can't take his. I'm sure they can. I can't. Two people. Oh, yeah, yeah.
way above
Yeah, I said I have to retire in 10 years, so I gotta get through mayors first.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's doing good, he's in Maryland. Oh, is he? Yeah. Is the comptroller back there?
Same guy.
He's right on the border of getting.
He never answered the question.
It's cold in here.
It's a little chilly.
I kinda like it.
We're going to write it down, you got that?
I got it.
Where's the mayor?
The council has returned from executive session. We discussed two matters of litigation with two different entities. The mayor recused himself from one of those discussions because of interest in that organization. And action was taken and will be reflected in next week's minutes. Thank you.
Let's begin tonight's common council meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Mayor Reed?
Present.
Counselor Barbell?
Here.
Counselor Kelly?
Here.
Counselor Gibbs?
Here.
Counselor DeDominicis?
Here.
Counselor McFarland?
Here.
Counselor Moore?
Here.
I have no comment at this time. Please continue.
Resolved that the minutes of the regular meeting of the common council held on January 16th, 2020 are approved and placed on file among the public records of the city clerk's office.
Moved by Councilor Gibbs, second by Councilor DeDominicis. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Passed.
Resolved that the payrolls of the various departments of the city of Plattsburgh for the week ending January 22nd, 2020 in the amount of $61,494.63 are authorized and allowed, and the mayor and the city clerk are hereby empowered and directed to sign warrants drawn on the city chamberlain for the payment thereof.
Moved by Councilor Moore, second by Councilor Gibbs. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed. You have your regular weekly reports in your packages. Can I ask for any additional committee reports? Beginning with governance strategy and city operations, Councilor Barbell.
Nothing to report.
City infrastructure, Councilor Moore.
Oh, yeah, we're gonna have to start on, working on some new water rates pretty soon. We completed the wastewater rates, and we now need to complete the, water rates. And that's about all I have.
Thank you. Finance and budget, Councilor Kelly.
We've had such a busy meeting tonight, I didn't have a chance to pass out the bills, but we need to have 3 signatures on bills, please, if anybody's willing. Thank you. That's all I have for tonight.
Public safety, Councilor Gibbs.
We had our monthly scheduled meeting this evening. We had a very thorough reporting from Chief Ritter on asset forfeiture, and I really appreciate your thoroughness in that. We've been having ongoing meetings with both police and fire for ongoing personnel issues and concerns, and also to help Councilor Barbell learn the lay of the land. And we're hoping to continue those meetings and come to some solutions. So that's all.
Thank you. Plattsburgh Public Library, Councilor DeDominicis.
Nothing other than attending the first meeting next Tuesday, I believe, so.
And MLD Board President, Councilman McFarland?
The only update I have is that we will have our first meeting of the year on next Thursday, the 30th at 4:30, so set your TiVo.
Thank you. Resolve the reports as listed are hereby ordered received, and any written reports are placed on file among the public records of the city clerk's office, moved by Councilor Gibbs and second by Councilor
Second.
Barbell. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? No correspondences or recommendations from boards at this time. Please continue.
Resolved that the bills on by the common council for the week ending January 24th, 2020 in the amount of $1,580,349.47 are authorized and allowed, and the mayor and the city clerk are hereby authorized and directed to sign warrants drawn on the city chamberlain for the payment thereof.
Moved by Councilor Kelly,
Second.
second by Councilor Barbell. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed. Invite any of the public to make sure you have an agenda. They're available just outside the door there. This first discussion, or this first comment period is for items on the agenda only. There will be another discussion opportunity to address the council at the end of the meeting as well. Seeing none, please continue. Oh, I'd like to hand down the reappointment of Commissioner of the Plattsburgh Housing Authority Board to Amy Bond, effective April 6th, 2020 through April 5th, 2025. And this is a renewal. She's actually been on the Public Housing Authority.
So moved.
It's just a roll call.
Okay.
Council Barbell?
Yes.
Council Kelly?
Yes.
Council Gibbs?
Yes.
Council DeDominicis?
Yes.
Council McFarland?
Yes.
Council Moore?
Yes.
Authorizing the implementation and funding of the first instance 100% of the federal aid and state Marshall Shelley program aid eligible costs of a transportation federal aid project.
Beth, I'd like to make the motion to waive the reading and move to resolution, please.
Moved by Councilor Gibbs, second by Councilor DeDominicis. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Discussion on the item itself.
Well, Mayor, it looks as though we have $2 million plus here to spend on this project. And I assume that at least most of that money comes from grants, correct?
I think approximately 75% of it at this point.
I believe the match is 75, so yeah. The match is 25, so 75. And just so
That was
the
80.
council is aware, this resolution does not commit the council to spending any money beyond what has already been committed by the council per a capital project resolution that was passed last fall. Chamberlain, Marks, myself went through all of the accounting for SRT2 to provide the council with an update based on the most current construction cost estimates for every aspect of the project, and then gave you a figure that the council would need to commit in addition from the general fund that had already been committed. The council agreed to that last fall. This resolution is simply a template that was provided by DOT that they require before physical work starts on any federally funded project. So the 2.033 million that is included there, that is the total amount of state aid included. Although, as the mayor said, there is a city match there, so the total amount that is committed in terms of grant funding is 1.6. Hold on.
No, it's 80%.
Is it 80% or?
It's 80%, yeah. 1.626 million in federal funding.
I think though that our share is gonna be closer to about 25% because there are some overruns and they committed a certain amount of funding and the city is responsible for anything over that, so.
Yeah, so there's a set amount of federal funding that goes to this. Anything beyond that and the $500,000 parks grant is also on tonight's agenda. Those costs will be borne by the city alone.
Alright. So we're expecting a 5% overrun.
What's that?
Never mind.
Based on the last analysis that we did, I think that was about right. I think that we'd worked out purchase of a couple of prefab bridges for this.
I know you're
The
looking
city's
at,
already bonded $574,000 for this, and we're going out the bond for another $586,000. So we'll be over $1 million.
I just have a question, Matt, you know, and when I was reading through it, you know, I wasn't obviously involved in the original discussions back in September, I think it was. It's talking about 2 footbridges across the river,
Yes.
and where, I understand where one might go, where the old bridge was, near the police station that connects, and where is the other footbridge?
The other one
The
extends
other one
Durkee.
will span the river, where Durkee Street currently terminates at the Saranac River. It will span directly over there to the former MGP site for Nice Egg.
Right
which
next to the regular bridge?
So there's 2 bridges they connect to go over and then back over to the,
Yeah, and it won't be a
To the
vehicular
flats.
bridge, it will be pedestrian and bicycle only, but it will connect Durkee Street to the Saranac River Trail Phase 2. The bridge is part of that trail, which will then wind around the perimeter of the MGP site to where it meets up with the second bridge which is being installed, which is the old Saranac Street. And that will go back over the river to Pine Street.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Have we explored other opportunities, and is it too late to do that?
To do what?
Have we explored other methods of completing the trail that don't include 2 bridges?
We may have at some point in the past. This project started in 2015 and has been passed through several departments, so I can't speak to what conversations or discussions might have been had in the past, but these are the plans that have been approved by DEC and DOT. So any substantial changes like that would require a further review by them, and substantial delays in the schedule.
Any further discussion or questions? Thank you. Roll call?
Council Barbell?
Yes.
Council Kelly?
Yes.
Council Gibbs?
Yes.
Council DeDominicis?
Yes.
Council McFarland?
yes.
Council Moore?
Yes.
New York State Parks Grant Contract PRK 01 EPF 1-2015-00030. Whereas the city of Plattsburgh was awarded a $500,000 grant from New York State Office of Parks, Recreation, and Historic Preservation in 2016 to accomplish the replacement of the Saranac Street Bridge as part of Phase 2 of the Saranac River Trail. And whereas the grant's budget and scope have been updated to reflect current construction cost estimates and schedules, it is hereby resolved that Colin Reed, as mayor of the city of Plattsburgh, is hereby authorized and directed to accept funds from the New York State Office of Parks, Recreation, and Historic Preservation in accordance with the provisions of Title IX of the Environmental Protection Act of 1993 in an amount not to exceed $500,000, and enter into and execute a project agreement with New York State for such financial assistance to the city of Plattsburgh for the city of Plattsburgh Saranac Street Bridge project.
Moved by
So moved.
Councilor Barbell, second by Councilor Gibbs. Discussion. And this is again related to last time.
What we're doing with this resolution is accepting a grant of $500,000 from the Department of Parks. Is that correct?
Yep, and this one is specifically for the replacement of the Saranac Street Bridge, constituent part of the Saranac River Trail Phase 2.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you, Matt.
Any further questions? Roll call?
Council Barbell?
Yes.
Council Kelly?
Yes.
Council Gibbs?
Yes.
Council DeDominicis?
Yes.
Council McFarland?
Yes.
Council Moore?
Yes.
Resolved in accordance with the request, therefore the common council approves and authorizes change order number 1 to Cumberland Avenue Pump Station CSO Upgrades, project contract 2019-04 with J.E. Sheehan Construction in the amount of $61,200, increasing the total contract amount to $464,020. Funding will be from capital project H8130.66. The time extension for substantial completion to June 30th, 2020 is also provided.
Moved by Councilor Moore, second by Councilor DeDominicis. Discussion? Roll call?
Council Barbell?
Yes.
Council Kelly?
Yes.
Council Gibbs?
Yes.
Council DeDominicis?
Yes.
Council McFarland?
Yes.
Council Moore?
Yes.
Resolved in accordance with the request, therefore the common council approves a year contract with Eagles Nest Veterinary Hospital for 2020 animal shelter services for fees outlined in the agreement.
Moved by Councilor Gibbs, second by Councilor Barbell. discussion?
I just have a question. Is there anyone else that does this, and did we check to see if anyone would do it at a better price?
Can I speak to that?
Yes, please.
Say your question one more time.
Oh, I was just wondering if there's anybody else that does this, houses problem animals, or that we checked around to see if anybody did it at a better price.
So the answer is our current, Elmore SPCA is usually who would provide this service. They do not provide this service, although they should to be in compliance with agricultural market law. Eagle's Nest is gracious enough to take this on for a fee, but it's a per usage fee. This is something that we rarely utilize, but to be in compliance with the state, we need to have a place that can accommodate this. There are no other places in the area locally that will do this except for them.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks.
So no.
No, I want to make sure it's here.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Roll call?
Counselor Barbell?
Yes.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Gibbs?
Yes.
Counselor DeDominicis?
Yes.
Counselor McFarland?
Yes.
Counselor Moore?
Yes.
In accordance with the request, therefore, the Common Council approves Building Inspector Joseph McMahon, Housing Inspector Kyle Berto, and Municipal Code Inspector James Welch to attend the 25th Annual Northern Adirondack Continuing Education Conference promoting the code official's role as a first preventer in Lake Placid, New York from March 2nd through 5th, 2020 at a cost not to exceed $975. This codes education conference provides mandatory training hours to retain code enforcement certification and will be paid out of the 2020 Building Inspector Training and Education budget.
Moved by Councilor McFarland, second by Councilor Gibbs. Discussion? Roll call?
Counselor Barbell?
Yes.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Gibbs?
Yes.
Counselor DeDominicis?
Yes.
Counselor McFarland?
Yes.
Counselor Moore?
Yes.
Are there any resolutions for initial consideration at this time?
I just have one that we vote on picking an option for the Cogan Street project next week, because it is getting late. If we want to get this completed this summer, we need to pick an option and move forward.
Thank you. Any others?
I just wanted to express some thanks to the OpenGov people for the 2 meetings that I attended, and they're in the process of beginning the development of a performance metrics and a dashboard for the city government, which will provide very good information to the public about what the departments in the city are actually doing, what they're accomplishing, as well as providing information back to those individual departments and the employees to look at the metrics that they have set for themselves in their departments. And if they're not accomplishing, or if it's not moving in the direction, we call it turning the curve. You have a baseline, you set an estimate, looking at the chief, we're gonna reduce felonies by, 10% next year. And you look at what it takes to do that. You articulate that to your staff, and your staff think together with you about, is there a way we could do business differently? And then you look at that report quarterly or whatever, and if the trend is not going in the direction you want, it gives you the opportunity to step back early in the year and to begin to think about, maybe we ought to be thinking about some other way of doing it and how somebody else is doing that. So I think it provides really interesting information to individuals doing the work in the city. Not that all the budget and information isn't important, but I think this is a whole different set of information that will be made available to employees, to departments, and to the public when they access the OpenGov site to get a better understanding of what your dollars are going for and the outcomes that are being achieved by those dollars. So I was very impressed with the fact that this is coming to fore, and it will take a lot of work, I think, to put it in place, but I think it's going to be tremendous for everybody.
Thank you. Any other new business or council report?
I just had a couple of constituent complaints. One was about skunks and raccoons living at 15 Cal Street. Is there anything that we can do about that to?
I'm gonna recommend just make sure that they contact us and we'll log them into the complaint log and all your constituent complaints. We have a complaint log, we log in, we then send it to the appropriate, department and then they respond in that complaint log. So we can certainly log that one on 15 Cout Street.
And the other one was some streetlights that have been out for quite a while. One on the corner of Margaret and Elm, and the other one just a little bit farther down the street, more in front of Press Republican. So I just bring these to your office and you log those. Okay.
Can Mackenzie make that complaint about for the Press Republic?
I also have a constituent who emailed me about trying to pay his MLD bill. He doesn't really give me a lot of information, but I thought I'd ask. He says he's been trying for 2 months to go to autopay, but with no success. And he asked me to check into it, but I don't really know how to do that. So should I direct him someplace?
Have him call the office.
What's your number?
518-563-7704.
I will do that.
And if he has to leave a message, we'll call him back.
Okay.
And we'll work him through how to get set up for our pay.
Thank you.
Some people have problems getting established because they're not putting their account numbers and their ADA numbers in correctly. And the bank just can't process it.
Thank you.
Do you have an update on how that program is going?
Last I looked, and it was a couple weeks ago, we had 204 accounts set up.
Good.
So, out of 12,000.
I've gotten some constituent complaints about the opposite of a light being out, that the light on Lynn Street is too bright. I was gonna bring it up at the MLD meeting, but it seemed appropriate.
We can log all these things into the complaint log. Yes. Any other new business or council reports? Seeing none, this is another opportunity for the public to please come and address the council on any issues of mutual concern. We have a sign-up sheet right here.
I'm Sue Ralston. I live at 32 Cogan Avenue, and I just have one question about this project. I believe Ms. Gibbs said that you may be eligible for federal funding for the sidewalks. My only question is, if that's true, do you have to apply for it? And if you do have to, will that delay the start of the project?
This is actually CHIPS's state funding. They grant us a certain amount each year. We use, I think, around $300,000 or $400,000 each year. We tend to use it for our bigger projects like this. And no, it's already pre-approved.
Okay,
So it wouldn't
perfect.
hold us up at all.
That's all I needed to know. Thank you.
Mhm. Please sign this sheet here, please.
I'm timing for us, Mayor. I'm
Okay,
timing.
thanks.
Mm-hmm.
My name is Rich Cummins. I live at 72 Cogan. I just want to say, over the past week, I visited many houses on and adjacent to Cogan Avenue with 2 petitions regarding Cogan Avenue project, and I'd like to submit these to the council if I may.
Please do.
I don't know, it's just-
You can give them right to Beth.
The first petition that was signed by all but 2 of the people that I talked to requested there be at least a 4th option that simply fixes the areas that needed to be fixed without taking away anything from the homeowners, whether that be the front lawns, the sidewalks, or on-street parking. Every single person I talked to was against taking away on-street parking. In fact, 4 people that our councilwoman talked to last week said that she wasn't completely forthcoming when presenting the 3 options, only telling the negative aspects of the 2 options she was against and failing to mention taking away all parking on the street, clearly promoting the option that she was to recommend. We would like you to revisit the plans to be allowed to voice our opinions and involved in discussions throughout the process before decisions are made. I realize that part of that has been addressed already, and there is a 5A. I think that if people were more involved and they understood this a little bit more, maybe have a question and answer instead of just you telling your side and then us telling our side, I think it might be a little bit more beneficial for everybody. The second petition was simply to ask that every single person on or adjacent to Kogan with the property that could be affected be advised of meetings and discussions ahead of time. As it stands now, a lot of people didn't know anything or very little about this project. Some people heard on the news or read it in the paper, but at most a couple of days prior. Most of the people that I talked to found out about last week's meeting from the papers my wife and I deposited on each house the 2 nights prior to the meeting. I know the council is trying to make this out to not be a big deal. I've heard numerous times that this will only affect the top end of Kogan and that the rest of Kogan has no need to worry. I'm saying that's untrue. Our councilwoman sent an email to a fellow Kogan Avenue resident stating, "I want it to be clear that this project will not affect where you live. The project is from Cornelia to the Park Avenue West intersection." Yet when another concerned resident from the so-called affected area asked about the rest of the West End area not being ADA compliant and the council forcing the street to be, the response from her was this: "It is true that the West End does not have these kinds of stripes on the side of the road or for ADA compliance. We are trying to rectify this as we pave new roads. You are correct that the remainder of the West End and many other portions of the city do not have these stripes for pedestrian and wheelchair access, but we can only rectify this portion right now." To me, that doesn't sound like it won't affect the rest of the street. In fact, this will impact not only this street, but the entire West End and eventually any residential area within the city of Plattsburgh. Each time a street that doesn't meet these guidelines needs to be repaved. What is decided on this project will be the blueprint for all other projects coming up. So I want everybody in this room or watching this live stream to pay close attention to how the council handles this matter and not to make the mistake in assuming that this will not happen to your street in the future. This council is voted in by the people of the city. You're expected to make hard decisions that not everyone is going to agree with. I understand that. But you are also expected to look out for the best interests of the people and keep transparency in the things you do. When something like this comes up and several people voice concerns, you shouldn't shut people out by making them feel that they don't matter or that it isn't their concern. You should not only listen to the people that speak out against your agenda, but additionally ask everyone that is possibly affected for input as well. That's the very least that I expect from my elected officials. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Anyone would like to please come and address the council? Seeing none, do I have a motion to adjourn? Councilor Davis, seconded by Councilor Barbell. Roll call.
Councilor Barbell?
Yes.
Councilor Kelly?
Yes.
Councilor Gibbs?
Yes.
Councilor Dominicus?
Yes.
Councilor McFarland?
Yeah.
Councilor Moore?
Yes.
Thank you all for coming out tonight.
Thank you, Mayor.
Yeah, it was right on. It was going to affect everybody in the city at some point.
Yes. Yes.
I got a chance to close in my office like in the summer. I just remembered it today.